Morning.
Good morning.
Bit tricky on the lighting right now, unfortunately.
So sorry if we look a bit dark.
Yeah, we're just below the Marple locks.
Yeah, just before the aqueduct.
Yeah, and a train just came over the aqueduct a second ago, which stopped us recording again.
Viaduct.
Viaduct. Yes, right. So yeah, we've had a fun day because we started by having this thing. I had to pull this off the prop.
Well, it got wrapped around yesterday, but we you never feel like doing it at the end of the day. You think, I'll do it tomorrow,
So
and
I
then
went
the
out
next
this
day
morning, and I
comes.
just thought it would be like a plastic bag or whatever, but it turns out it's like one of those kind of nylon ribbon rope lines that you get at like movie theaters and stuff, or malls where there's that
Like safety barrier type things.
Yeah, and it pulls out of one of them, and then you slide the plastic into the other one, and it's like somebody's.
You still had the bit of plastic attached.
Yeah, the bit of plastic's attached on one end. The other end was pulled, like I don't know, pulled right out of its socket or whatever. And
it wasn't like
somehow this thing ended up in here, and it's like a nylon webbing. So when it wrapped around the prop, it just kept wrapping and somehow actually tied itself into a knot. So I was going through all sorts of funny contortions to try and get that thing loose this
I
morning.
hope it wasn't like a barrier across the edge of a canal saying, danger, do not pass. If
it was, we passed. You Gandalf, it is not. So, yeah.
There's a really lovely mooring here.
Yeah.
We walked down and went under the aqueduct yesterday, and we found out that there's not an aqueduct going over a viaduct, it's an aqueduct running alongside a viaduct.
Yeah, I'd gotten that wrong. It's the river that we pass over, and then the aqueduct passes on one side, and then several years later, it took 5 years to build the aqueduct, and there was a couple of design changes and stuff, and then the railway viaduct was built a few years later and took 1 year. So
maybe they learned the lessons from the aqueduct.
I think so.
It's really deep, a valley.
Yeah, it's quite nice though. It's like very much an sort of Romanesque, aesthetically pleasing thing. They definitely went out of their way to make it look dramatic over the gorge.
Yeah,
and it does.
So yeah, today we've got 16 locks to do. They're all deep locks, with 13 feet, I think. And we walked up yesterday and had a look. You didn't look down the chamber, but I was like, yep, that's the deep lock. And there was actually 3 lock keepers working yesterday. And when we arrived at like 2, they hadn't had one boat go through. So we were like, we should have just gone. But
they did say there'd be volunteers today, so hopefully there's some.
And even if there's not, we've got my canal on their way, so they'll be helping us through, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the real tragedy is last night George lost his ball. Because basically the towpath here runs along an embankment, and there is a fairly steep drop once you get over this stone wall of grassland towards the river. And it drops, 30 degrees sort of thing. It's definitely not shallow. And George, in trying to catch a ball, sort of instead of catching it, he lunged at it, and his teeth bounced it, and it went over the wall, and I had to catch him as he tried to sail over the wall after it, and it went down the embankment.
Somewhere.
And it was getting dark, so I lost sight of it, and I went down there this morning, because there is a sort of human pathway back that way, where there's a little pathway to get you to a certain point, and I thought maybe if it's only rolled down the first like 20 feet or whatever, I could actually find it. And there were these orange things down there that I saw in my flashlight glow last night. And I was like, that might be the ball. And it turns out they're a beer can. So, very annoying. So sad times. George has lost another ball. So if you happen to be down that valley or somewhere up the river Goit, or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it's pronounced, actually. No. Anyway, if you're downstream on the river, you might see one floating past and enjoy it. It's a good ball.
Right, let's go, because it
might still be covered in slobber. Yeah?
Well, I've suddenly realised that we're a quarter of a mile from the bottom of the thing, and I don't know if they know to walk up here.
Well, that's a good point. We should let them know.
All right, then.
Okay, I thought they knew.
Well, they do know we're here, but
they don't know where we are.
I don't know if they thought we were going to just move on and meet them at the bottom.
Well, we should probably communicate that then.
Yeah, we should.
Okay, we go communicate that now.
This is Rose Hill Cutting. It was originally Rose Hill Tunnel, but at some point in the 1800s the roof collapsed. Rather than try to repair the tunnel, it was decided it should be opened up to make a deep cutting. You can see how steep it is. Work was carried out in the 1990s to reduce the slope and reinforce the embankment. Behind all that stonework is now a concrete wall. We meet Mike and Elle at the start of the Marple Aqueduct as arranged, ready for our climb up the flight. The Marple Aqueduct is the highest canal aqueduct in England and the highest fully masonry aqueduct in Britain. The Pontysilter Aqueduct in Wales, which we crossed in 2019, has a steel trough design. The Marple Aqueduct carries the canal 90 feet above the River Goyt below. It was opened in 1800. 3 huge stone arches support the navigation above. Next to the aqueduct is the viaduct which carries the railway. The route of the canal now bends to the left and travels under the railway line. This is Engineers Wharf. The Peak Forest Canal Company's workshops were located here. There was a blacksmith's forge and a carpenter's workshop. After that, the area was home to a glue factory, and then a chemical company, and then a mill, and it's now a business park. Into the bottom lock we go. We're about to rise up 209 feet to the upper level of the canal. There are 16 locks in total, which means that each lock has an average rise of 13 feet and 1 inch, and they cover a distance of about 1¼ miles. There's a lockkeeper's cottage next to the bottom lock, which apparently dates back to 1835. With 2 extra members of crew joining us today, we can take it in turns to walk ahead to set the next lock. It's such a treat to have help on a flight of locks like this. A change of driver for this one. The next lock isn't quite ready, so I wait in the middle of the pound for the gates to be opened. I tend to hang back from the lock in situations like this, as the water draining out of the lock chamber has a tendency to push you to the side of the pound, and I want to stay away from the edges where the water is much shallower. Lock 6 was the last lock in the flight to be completed in late 1804. Apparently, the first boat to travel down the flight when this lock was built was also called Perseverance. There was a lock house next to this lock, which was built in 1935. Sadly, it was demolished in the 1960s. The upper and lower levels of the canal were completed in 1796, 8 years before the locks were in operation. During these 8 years, there was a temporary tramway installed to transport goods between the 2 halves of the canal. The locks are relatively close together, which means the pounds in between them are too short to function as reservoirs to supply the deep locks. To address this problem, the pounds were made wider than was required for navigation, so that they could store more water. As I said, all of these locks are pretty deep, but the 2 deepest locks on this flight are this one and Lock 14, which both have a rise of 13 feet and 6 inches. ground paddle at this lock is chained up, so we need to rise the lock using the gate paddle only. Considering how deep these locks are, they've been fairly gentle to fill. Even so, we take this one extra slow to ensure that the boat isn't pushed around too much. This is Samuel Oldnell's warehouse. Samuel Oldnell being a mill owner and sponsor of the building of the Peak Forest Canal. The warehouse has 3 stories and was built in the early 19th century. A canal arm extended into the warehouse for more efficient loading. There's still a tollgate lock cottage standing next to this lock. Of course, these days we don't have to pay the toll. One of the reasons these locks race so smoothly is probably the baffle, which sends water equally to the sides of the chamber as they fill. Lock 12 is also known as Black Wharf Lock, and in the 1800s there was a blacksmith's forge and timber yard next to the lock. There was also a short arm that served the old Hollins mill. There's a blocked-off arch to the left of the lock, which once led to Samuel Oldnell's lime kilns. The kilns were built to burn the limestone transported from Bugsworth Basin. There was a shed covering the end of this arm, where 2 boats could be loaded at once while the cargo was protected from the elements. I really love this row of cottages that curve up the road alongside the top 3 locks. Here the locks are much closer together, meaning that the side pounds needed to be built to store the water that was needed to keep the locks supplied. There's really a lot of gongoozlers out today. I don't know how common it is to see a boat using these locks, but we're certainly the only boat using them today. Here we are arriving at the top of the flight. Turn right here and you immediately join the Macclesfield Canal, but we're turning left to explore the upper level of the Peak Forest Canal. We pause for a second. After all, there's no boats waiting, and Michael walks to use the Elsenham rubbish point just round the corner. Then it's time to say goodbye, and a huge thank you to Elle and Mike for all their help today. We're now on the Upper Peak Forest Canal, which stretches 6 miles from here to its terminuses at Bugsworth Basin and Whaley Bridge. On the left-hand side of the canal is a short arm that led to the lime kilns. It's now used as moorings. Samuel Oldnell also mined coal from this area in the early 1800s for use in his kilns. He had a number of pits located near this part of the canal. It's around here that we start to get a glimpse of some of the views that this canal has to offer as we look out over the valley towards Marple Bridge and Mellor. can't get enough of these views, and we're so lucky to be seeing them on a blue sky late summer day. We reached the first of the lift bridges on the Upper Peak Forest, and this one is operated with a windlass. As we come through, I see a boat approaching from the other direction, so I hold it open for them too. It'll save their crew having to crank it open and shut again. We have some good fortune at the next bridge, as there's a boat coming through when we arrive, and they kindly hold it for us. We emerge from the woodland at New Mill. The old Brunswick Mill is on the left and Albion Mill is on the right. It's now home to the Swizzle Sweet Factory, and there's definitely an aroma of sugar in the air. Beyond Albion Bridge is the old canal foundry and the site of the Victoria Mill. This is New Mill's Marina, a bit of a multi-purpose site. As well as private moorings and a hire boat base, there's a caravan park here and holiday cottages available to let. These moorings surely have to have some of the best views on the network. We paused alongside one of the boats to admire the scenery and have a chat. It's so nice hearing about how other people have recently bought their narrowboat homes. One more swing bridge, and after stopping to talk for so long, 2 boats have caught up with us, and so I reopened the bridge for them too. This is the Furnace Vale Marina, which stretches along the navigation. The moorings make use of the old Furnace Basin, where coal from Digley Drift Mine and Furnace Clough Colliery would have been loaded onto barges via a tramway. Under the bridge we reach Bridgemount Junction, where the Peak Forest Canal splits. To the right is the Whaley Bridge branch, and we take the left branch to Bugsworth Basin.
So we made it to Bugsworth Basin. Sun is going down very soonish.
It's a long day.
And it got longer towards the end because, well, we opened a swing bridge to let 2 boats pass.
Well, we opened a swing bridge to let
us pass.
us pass. And then I shut it and I turned around and there was a boat just arriving, and I have a conscience, which means I can't not reopen it for them.
Yeah.
Because they were just about to jump off, but I'm there with my key in. And then they were grateful and came through and they said, oh, there's another boat right behind us.
So 2 boats came through, passing us, which would be fine, except for there's a lot of moored up boats down here. There's a little marina there, right where the swing bridge was.
I didn't realise there'd be so many moorings.
And so we had to move quite slowly, like just a tick over, and we're in like a convoy, so every time the boat in front slows down, the middle boat has to slow down, which, you know, sort of jackknifes us all together.
Yeah.
And we end up into a little bit of a stop start thing. It was already getting late in the evening. We started a little late at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, late for us because we were waiting for our friends to show up and help us.
Which was great because there was no lock keepers on duty. We'd probably still be around lock 15 if they hadn't.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
But I mean, with them, the locks went quite quickly.
Yeah, it was
and
good
then
fun.
We got to the top and it was like, okay, time to go down the Peak Forest. There was kind of a couple of places really early where we could have moored.
Yeah, but it was such a lovely afternoon for like mid-September.
Yeah.
It just felt like we should make the most of it.
So it's like definitely keep going.
And then the views were just...
The views are amazing.
I know the camera's not going to do them justice, but just the views over the Dales were just amazing.
But then there's a series of swing bridges.
And then that was fine, but then coming into Bugsworth Basin, well, basically there's 2 options. You can go down to Whaley Bridge, but we ended up following the other boats down to Bugsworth, even though we probably should have just gone the other way.
It was like, because I knew Bugsworth Basin has 3 basins, and I was like, okay, I'll follow the boats up.
Well, this one looked quite full as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we followed them down and then reversed out and came down this one.
Because they took the last 2 moorings on the upper basin, which meant that we were like, okay, we'll have to come back here. And there actually are spaces. There's enough room for another probably 5
Well, because we
boats.
could have gone at the end there. There's one here, but it's fine. We've got a mooring, and I think we've got a 48-hour mooring here. I wasn't expecting Bugsworth Basin to be so big and busy. I wasn't expecting the Peak Forest Canal to have so many moorings, like moored boats, and I guess because the Huddersfield was just dead, there was no one there.
So it's about to get dark anyway. So thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and subscribe to Minimalist Maximal Velocity if you want to get our time lapses. And then, if all else, make sure that if you really want them, you click that bell if you want to get notifications. Crispy non-duck pancakes. It's kind of strange that they actually call it that. Vegetarian duck pancakes. It sort of implies that there's a vegetarian duck going, I don't eat meat, but I love to be chewed on.